I was sitting in the balcony. He didn't even know who I was. The second night, Sarah Jordan Powell brought me to the front row. Lord have mercy, in Azusa 92. And I was there when Richard Hinton was preaching, and he was preaching about the turning of the stage. And I was sitting on the front row. After the service, I shook hands with him for the first time, and he put his hands on my chest and he said, "You sound like you can preach." You remember that? Hallelujah. I didn't know anything about television. I come up in the hills of West Virginia. I know more about storefronts than I do about TV. I didn't know what they were going to do with the message. I preached a message called Behind Closed Doors. I preached at his church, and the balcony was empty and the floor was full. And I preached behind closed doors. And he took about a 7-minute clip 7 years ago and put it on television. I never asked him to do it. I never knew he was going to do it. I didn't know nothing about it. I just knew that God had given me a message, and I preached the message. He only used 7 or 8 minutes of the message. He put it on his show. And they tell me that Paul Crouch had just come in at the same time that Carlton's show was going on there. And he came in the room at the particular time that I was on the air. If Paul would have stopped to get a Coke, he'd have never known who I was. But he hit the remote control and turned on the TV at the 7 minutes that I was preaching. 7 minutes, 7 years ago. And it just so happened, I was talking about how important it is to show people who you really are. And it just so happened that Paul was writing a book, I Had No Father But God. And he was trying to wrestle with whether to tell the whole story or not. And it just so happened that at the right 7 minutes, they picked the right 7 parts of my message at the right time to touch his heart, to make him weep. If Paul would have stopped for a ham sandwich, if you would have decided I'm not going to put it on the air, if I would have preached another sermon